Liar, liar. I looked at the letters L-I-A-R, then recalled Marmion and Sir Walter Scott, and that I was the grandson of a Breckenridge Knox, and heard in my mind the words of a fellow Scotsman, Sir Walter Scott, often quoted by my mother. She was the one who guided me on a path that circumvented the web of deception. Following her wise counsel has spared me the grief and pain of retributive justice. Oh, what a tangled web we weave when at first we practice to deceive. My wife, however, is so more at ease with the poetry and culture of the British Isles. Her direct Scottish ancestors have been identified as far back as the 15th century. But alas, she was unaware of this while she attended a prestigious Church of England boarding school in the rarefied elevation of Brownstown, St. Anne Parish, on the Caribbean island of Jamaica. Supportive of my choice of quotation, Monica reminded me that most of her pedagogical team at the critical nunnery of St. Hilda's were recruited either from Bonnie, Scotland, Merry England, or Gaelic Ireland. Monica attributes her appreciation of English and Scottish literature, music, song and dance to an anthology called, quote, Palgrave's Golden Treasury English Verse, which was given to her to read and which she much enjoyed. But she was unaware in real time of another fact. It is the historical truth that her paternal ancestors, the Belnavis family, coupled with the famous line of Campbells, are counted among the Scottish aristocracy. Their impressive pedigree is included in the Lairds of Glenlane by Duncan Campbell. Indeed, the Belnavis have been traced directly to lands under the Thane of Glamis, a title briefly held by Lord Macbeth, about whose litany of lies, deceptions, and heretical belief in witches Shakespeare wrote extensively in his tragic play, Macbeth. Literary gurus have connected Sir Walter Scott. He was offered the position of Poet Laureate in 1813 but turned it down, warning to the fatalistic consequences of premeditated lies, which, as Macbeth's historical play and his fellow Scotsman's poetry reveal, have the tragic tendency to embroil perpetrators in a web of overwhelming deception from which disentanglement is impossible. The Belnavis lands were by royal charter in the 15th century conveyed to the fourth Thane of Glamis. As far as the Gordon clan connection goes, it is rumoured that a paternal ancestor and his brother were adopted and brought by a Scottish missionary from their home in the Royal Kingdom of Benin, somewhere around 1740, travelling via Glasgow to Jamaica. Bearing in mind the foregoing genealogical context, Monica and I make no apologies for quoting poetry of Scotland or admitting that we have been socialized and educated to savour their literary content, as others similarly favour their respective pumpkin pies. Consider, however, how shocked we were to discover that a pro-Trump activist had in 2019 utilized the very same quotation to lodge a complaint on social media. He alleged that lies were being told by legislators to embarrass and disparage the twice impeached adulterous president. The lines mentioned by my opening paragraph are taken from Sir Walter Scott's epic poem, Marmion, A Tale of Flodden Field. It is a story of how one of Henry VIII's courtiers, Lord Marmion, vigorously pursued his lust for a rich woman, Clara Clare. He and his mistress, a delinquent nun, Constance de Beverley, devised a scheme to implicate Clara's fiancé in treason. It becomes chaotic And although Marmion appears to have won by defeating Clara's fiancé in a duel, Clara, rather than endure Marmion's repugnant attentions, retires to a convent. It is fair to say that Lord Marmion's reputation is not unlike that of a twice impeached former commander-in-chief, before, during, and after his stint in the Oval Office, notwithstanding a plethora of feigned protestations of innocence relative to somewhat unspecific minor issues of impropriety already in the public purview. I began to see the subtleties and beauty of good poetry, Monica explained, thanks to my discovery of Miss Palgrave's Golden Treasury, a remarkable anthology, for it has remained continuously in print since 1861. In those bygone days, science subjects weren't taught by the spinsters imported to groom us, so that on our coming out of school, we would be as exquisitely finished as one would expect of young British ladies, quote, to the manner born, but ignorant of the sciences. But back to the bard. The historical facts are that the gracious Duncan succeeded Malcolm II, who died in Glamis in 1034. Duncan was slain in the battle at a site near Elgin. His defeat caused the accession of Macbeth to the crown of Scotland. Macbeth was slain by Macduff at Lump. Monica's Scottish ancestors, the Belnavies, derived their name from the lands of Belnevis in the parish of Kinnell, Angus. The estate passed from the Belnavises to the Frasers, when Thomas Lord Fraser of Lovat granted a charter of the Belnavis lands to the barony of Kinnell to George V Lord Glamis on the 1st October 1501. The present castle, Glamis, was given by King Robert II to Sir John Lyon, along with the Thaindom of Glamis. It became the family home of the Queen Mother and is not the place where the killings in the play Macbeth occurred. The plot of the play is an enduring lesson to every ambitious person, because it reiterates that when you lie, you are initiating problems and a domino structure of complications, which eventually runs out of control, spelling disaster for the evil perpetrator. Whilst each of us is entitled to his or her private thoughts, it would take more than a supporter's wish, given the abundance of evidence gathered by the Congress, for the fair-minded to conclude that the desired outcome ought not to occur. I have faith, pleaded the ardent sycophant, that the tangled web of deceit, exclusively attaching, of course, to liberal legislators and progressive investigators, will be revealed. But what a terrible price we have paid as a nation, based on lies and irrational anti-Trump hatred. Indeed, it appears more likely that his fate will definitely mirror the consequences that my mother foretold for doing wrong, as manifested in Macbeth's retributive justice, where rehabilitation was clearly contraindicated. But there is another Scottish poet from the Golden Treasury of Palgraves, who met Walter Scott when Walter was age 15. He is famous, relevant, and is regarded as the poet of Scotland. His name is Robert Burns. There is a lot of shared history between Scotland and Jamaica, although there has been some reluctance to discuss the role the Scots played in the slave trade and the plantation system. And cities like Glasgow prospered. History records the hefty, unconscionable profits these commercial arrangements earned for investors. This interest by wealthy Scottish financiers and investors dates back to the Darien scheme in the last years of the 17th century and involved participation by several of the Belnavis family. The Isthmus of Panama turned out to be unsuitable, and the scheme collapsed in disaster. Some of these investors turned their attention to Jamaica, and other Caribbean territories. Monica's sixth great-granduncle was a medical doctor, a Campbell of Glenlyon, who settled in St. Elizabeth, Jamaica in the 1740s. The Belnavis line from Perth were mainly clerics, whereas the Campbells gravitated to professional and entrepreneurial occupations. Burns, we know, wrote when he was unable to sustain himself in Scotland that he was migrating to Jamaica in order to become, quote, a poor Negro driver. He had intended to take up a job as a bookkeeper, but just weeks before he was due to sail, his manuscript of poems in the Scottish dialect was published, and its early success was so phenomenal, he moved instead to Edinburgh to pursue his writing career. Today, Jamaicans celebrate Robert Burns' songs, incorporating our music, dance, and other art forms. In 2018, reggae legend Ken Booth added his distinctive voice to a collection of Burns songs being reimagined by a group of Jamaican artists in Scotland and the Caribbean. A rendition by Brina of The Slave's Lament, Jamaica version 2015, comparable in style to Giuseppe Verdi's Nabucco, Hebrew slave chorus, with lyrics written in 1792 by Burns, is an inspirational testament to the cultural goodwill that is being forged between people from these far-flung communities. The narrator. After so many years, the apology has not been sung. Burns saw it then. How come we did not? We got it wrong. Let's imagine it now. Robert Burns, in the photograph attached hereto, taken by Douglas Gordon, stands tall, a white marble hero, dominating the Great Hall of the Scottish National Portrait Gallery in Edinburgh. His distinctive Burns Klansman plaid becomes a toga. But now, look down and find Rabbi, his nickname, Dark Double, his exact inverse lying broken as a rubble on the mosaic floor, carved out of black marble from the same mine. The spiritual symbolism is evident. All his pristine aspects turn to dusky night. The nation's poet is ruined and fallen. This classic photo by photographer Gordon is titled Black Burns, and the current sleazy blizzard brings snow and frigidity, stultifying mind and body. Our vulnerability in the approaching cold front causes us to cease and ponder. Robbie Burns' musings in Ode to a Mouse on the real danger of dark schemes, the conspiracies of two-legged rodents. Burns agonized about the potential for disappointment when the best-laid schemes of mice and men end up in disaster. I suspect that as the poet conversed virtually with the mouse, to which the verses are dedicated, he is probably thinking of someone's shifty or rodential behavior. But the contour of his message is characteristically clever, cunning, coy, compassionate, and compelling. Quote, "To thole the winter's sleazy ribble, and cranrach cold. But Mousie, though I know thy blame, no proving foresight may be vain. The best laid schemes o' mice and men gang after gly, and LEA'US naught but grief and pain for promised joy. May the broken pieces of Burns' black statue rest in peace within the hall, for it is our final supplication that those of us who love poetry, honesty, justice, democracy, and the rule of law, and who passionately, more fervently desire fraternal bliss, irrespective of the ethnicity, place of origin of our brethren, may take comfort in the usually expressed in the acronym LEA'US. Black Rabbi lies in a rubble."